I really believe that water kefir is kind of like the new kid on the block. It's the next
Yeah.
best thing because it kind of marries the fermented live culture aspect of a kombucha with actually it tastes much like a soda. But it's similar to kombucha, but it's also very different. It doesn't brew a SCOBY the way that kombucha does. Kombucha has that layer of
the layer
SCOBY
of
on
it.
top.
Yep.
And the base brew of a kombucha is vinegar. It's an acetic acid. The other really cool thing about Fermenteria's brew is we have figured out a recipe to make everything that we brew 0 sugar and 0 sweeteners. And that is really, really unique for the functional beverage space. And we actually test that every single batch we test in-house. We have an in-house lab and a microbiologist, and we test everything that we do, and we actually propagate all of that in-house.
So as we kind of wrap up our chat today, there's one question I always ask our guests, and it is, what has been your recipe to revenue? Jade, I am so excited to have you here today to talk about your company. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here too. Thanks, Leah.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Let's just first by telling everybody what is water kefir and why you started Fermenteria.
Yes, so I discovered it myself when I was living in Nicaragua, and a friend of mine owned an actual fermenteria on the side of a dirt road, and I went in and she asked me to try it, and I couldn't believe that it was a probiotic beverage, full of healthy good things, and it was fermented, but it didn't taste like vinegar. It actually just tasted like a soda. And I was like, I have to figure out how to make this. So I asked her to show me how. And we tinkered with the recipe for probably about 2 years. We learned from making it kind of on the kitchen counter to figuring out how to make it commercially. And, water kefir wasn't really well known. It's really still not well known now, but not many people knew what it was. Everyone knew what kombucha was.
Sure.
So there wasn't a ton of literature on, there actually still isn't any literature on how to make it commercially.
Yeah.
So we bought, I bought these tanks for our brewery without even knowing if it was going to work or not. It was kind of a huge gamble.
Yeah.
And I think even for a year after that, every batch that we brewed, we were like, oh, we hope this works. Not sure. But water kefir is a fermented beverage, just like a kombucha is fermented. There aren't like a ton of fermented beverages out there, but kombucha really, I feel like they defined the functional beverage space when they first came out, and people were like, oh, you can drink something and it can actually also be good for you. It's not just a soda. And I felt like kombucha was kind of like the first one to do that. And yeah, I really believe that water kefir is kind of like the new kid on the block. It's the next best thing because it kind of marries the fermented live culture aspect of a kombucha with actually it tastes much like a soda. So our old cans were labeled bubble waters because I felt like it tasted more like a bubble water than anything else. And but it's similar to kombucha, but it's also very different. It doesn't brew a SCOBY the way that kombucha does. Kombucha has that layer of
the
SCOBY
layer of
on
it.
top.
Yep.
And the base brew of a kombucha is vinegar. It's an acetic acid. Whereas water kefir is more of a lactic acid. So it's when we brew these little things called grains, they're not actually grains, but they look like little gummies. And those are the water kefir cultures. We actually propagate those in-house in our in-house lab. And so water kefir is brewed from these cultures. And we have some similar, but also very different types of strains of bacteria and yeast in water kefir. And we have over 20 strains. So water kefir is very probiotic rich. Kombucha typically only has like 2 or 3 strains.
Hmm.
And our brews have 10 to 12 billion CFUs per can, which is the highest on the market. Um, most fermented beverage don't even make a claim.
Hmm.
And we actually test that every single batch we test in-house. We have an in-house lab and a microbiologist, and we test everything that we do, and we actually propagate all of that in-house. So our culture is like very proprietary to us.
Sure.
But it started as a wild culture, and we've kind of just developed it over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an
And they
amazing.
actually,
Yeah.
the other really cool thing about Fermenteria's brew is we have figured out a recipe to make everything that we brew zero sugar and zero sweeteners. And that is really, really unique for the functional beverage space. There's really no other beverage on the market that is fully functional, but also has zero sweeteners of any kind.
Yeah. So it basically has a similar nutrition profile to actual water besides the probiotic elements, in terms of no
Yeah, I
sugar, the
mean,
cup.
because it's fermented, it'll have, I think it has like 3 carbs. So I
Hmm.
think it has 10 calories per can. So it's not
Yeah.
a water. And by California law, we're not allowed to say that it's water.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went from being in Nicaragua, trying out this drink and saying, "Oh, this is something that I need to look into." How did you decide to go from that to manufacturing it in house with hiring a microbiologist on staff? And how did that process happen for you?
Yeah, it was crazy. But I already had this building, so that we had a couple really lucky things to our story. So I have a lot of compassion for CPG startups because it is a really really hard road. But I happen to have this building from my previous business,
Mhm.
and it was in kind of east side of downtown San Antonio, a yet ungentrified part of it. It was,
Yeah.
but a really fun part of it.
Yeah.
And it was an old abandoned auto warehouse when I first bought it. So it
Hmm.
has a warehouse and then it has an office space too.
Yeah.
And the warehouse already had floor drains. And so it was actually perfectly set up for it. And its zoning was also really easy for a brewery. So we turned that building into a brewery and then a tap room in front. So it currently has this really incredible tap room that's a really safe and really fun
Hmm.
space for a lot of like subculture arts in San
Hmm.
Antonio. It's really cool.
Excellent.
And then
What
we
is that
have
space called?
it's just called Fermenteria. Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
it's our tap room.
Okay.
And then we have the brewery in the back,
Hmm.
and then we have the lab and the warehouse and the storage and where they pack and shit. Like we learned how to can
Yeah.
and brew and pelletize all in like well, we've been brewing for a while, but we
Sure.
learned to pelletize and ship and operate forklifts in the last basically 6 weeks.
Wow.
um,
Did you have
so
anybody tell you, like,
no.
just go get a manufacturer? Like,
Oh,
why are you doing this?
well, I mean, no, because
Mhm.
I think a lot of people would self-manufacture if they could,
Mhm.
because, or at least start that way,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know how people don't,
Yeah.
um, but truthfully, there's not a lot of manufacturers out there who knew what water kefir was.
Right. That's the challenge here.
So yeah, so you can approach some of the kombucha breweries and ask them, and they will know what it is. But kombucha bacteria and water kefir bacteria are they don't coexist.
Mhm.
That even in the air can be contaminated.
Wow.
So it's very most would decline. Like I approach one or two, like so we will eventually need to come in.
Mhm.
And we approached one or two like really big kombucha makers that you would recognize, and they
Yeah.
declined. That we went pretty far with them, and
Mhm.
at the end, their microbiologist was like, "We can't risk contaminating our culture with
Yeah.
yours." So they are that different.
Yeah.
Um, but but because we have the system, like we have about a 45 barrel system, which is actually pretty large for a self-manufacturing for a
Mhm.
startup. And we have the flexibility to be able to change our recipe at any second, to
Yeah.
try different things. Our label has changed probably every 3 weeks for the
Yeah.
last year.
Wow.
So I don't know how anyone can sign on a dotted line for a 200,000 can run. It
Yeah.
is impossible.
Yeah.
Um, but but I think, I can see it both
Yeah.
ways. There's just the integrity of quality and passion that we can keep in house. And there's
Oh,
just
that
no
was
way to,
huge. It's
yeah,
just
there's no way to iterate that fast. Like we
yeah.
literally can think of flavors on the spot, get those ingredients in and then make
Yeah.
that brew that week. We have two really exciting SKUs that I just asked them yesterday, I was like, do you think we can debut this at Fancy Fair? They're like,
Mhm.
sure, why not?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's work
I
the
love
calendar
that.
back from that.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
do it. So.
And do you use the tap room to test out the new flavors
Oh
before you roll
yeah.
it out then?
Yeah, so our tap room, we actually brew both alcoholic and non-alcoholic
Hmm.
and we sell the alcoholic in the tap room and it's really popular and it's
Hmm.
really awesome. But yeah, our tap room are like the people who've been coming to that tap room have actually been our fans even before we were born.
Yeah.
So we have this amazing community. They actually have come out to volunteer when we were trying to
Hmm.
get that opening Sprouts PO out. We had,
Yeah.
so many volunteers in there just
Oh,
helping
wow.
us get out. So it was really cool. Yeah.
Oh, how cool. The community comes together to see the success of you. It's just an
Yeah.
amazing story. So I want to go back to, you were saying that you learned how to, put together the pallets and do a forklift. And, you come
Yeah.
from a great entrepreneurial background. This is like your third or fourth business venture that you've been involved
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so do you think that it's just that mindset of like problem solving? Let's just get through the problem that drove you to, you know, figure out these pieces, or was there some other factor that motivated you?
Well, let me be really clear about something. Like, I was not the one that was operating the forklift. I have
Yeah.
like this really incredible, very small but mighty team
Yeah.
at the tap room. I'm on the other side trying to figure out what the heck Katie's sending me and how to navigate the paperwork side of it
Yeah.
and the sales side. But I definitely stay in my lane there. I am not
Yeah.
mechanically inclined.
Yeah.
But I do have an entrepreneurial superpower, which is to identify and find the most incredible people and the most incredible humans on earth and figure out a way to latch them on to whatever I'm doing forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the head of that tap room, she was actually an employee of mine from my last business.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found this idea of this water kefir, she was sitting in that office, and I just was like, "Hey, Julie, would you mind just changing the water on this water filter like every
Yeah.
couple days and just like testing and seeing how this thing grows?" And she's like, "Are we fermenting something?" I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, it just so happens that like I have like a food science background and I'm like
Oh,
really
how
into
convenient.
fermentation."
Oh,
Yeah, so I mean it
I
was
think
really like,
that's what they call when the stars align.
yes, the universe was very good has been very good to us. So
Yeah.
and then she also is very mechanically inclined, but more than
Mm-hmm.
anything, it's really like the passion and the mindset. Um and so there's this saying that like the person who is passionate um, is will produce 10 times more than like a person who's just kind of doing it to get by, to
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
And that's really like our team.
Yeah.
I was not on the ground during the 100-hour weeks that they pulled at the end, but they just did whatever it took.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
How in that process of your superpower finding these great people, how do you portray and kind of share your passion with them to see if they kind of buy into the dream as well?
I mean, I convinced them that this thing could be big.
Yeah.
you know, um, and like we all just put it all on the line.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any investors or any partners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's quite a significant like financial burden.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm putting it all into this. And so I think they could see that I was doing that and I asked them to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to buy into this dream. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And, along the way, as you have these wins, like getting into Sprouts, for example,
Mm.
how do you kind of build that up to them to continue, fanning that flame?
Oh, look, we spent 2 years with not like we were grasping for wins. I was like,
Yeah.
guys, let's just count this as a win. We just really need to get through this week. And it was like pretty dark at times.
Mm-hmm.
I would say even a year ago, I was like, what are we doing? I could be
Mm-hmm.
taking this money and doing something else, investing in real estate or doing something else.
Yeah.
And what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing? And I really tried to shield the team a lot from
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the stress of that kind of back and forth in my head.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, I just was like, oh my God, we need a real win. And so, yeah, we had a lot of no's. Um, I would say our first yes was a broker in March,
Mm-hmm.
um, who is our broker for Whole Foods. And I emailed her and she was like, yes, definitely. And I was like,
Wow.
oh my God. And then quite, quite soon on her heels was the broker for Sprouts. And he
Mm-hmm.
was also a yes right away. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, wow. And things kind of like moved like fairly quickly after that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think just like the energy and the momentum really, that's a real thing,
Yeah.
the vibe that you're putting out into the world. And I we had our pitch slam with Sprouts pretty shortly after that.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave us a yes on the spot.
Wow. How was that experience, the pitch slam for you?
Well, it was a little nerve-wracking. Thankfully, my broker was in the room because
Mm-hmm.
they were like, look, it's nationwide or nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
we weren't producing enough volume to understand what our volume capabilities were
Yeah.
because we didn't have any sales. So we didn't know what our abilities were to
Yeah.
to make it. So I actually went in saying, oh, I think we can support 200 doors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, without really understanding. So I went in asking for just the Southern California and the Austin area
Mm-hmm.
region. And she's like, we don't really do regional.
Yeah.
So we're in refrigerated. So I know in
Mm-hmm.
Shelf Stable, they have the innovation set, but this was not for the
Mm-hmm.
innovation set.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, no, it's like nationwide or nothing. So
Yeah.
my broker thankfully like pitched in and was like, look, we'll talk about it and get back to you.
Yeah.
But just the fact that they were kind of all in from that second was like a little bit surreal. Yeah, for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you
Yeah,
walked
after
out of that. It's like,
all the
wow.
ups and downs and more downs than ups, it was so nice to have validation.
Yeah.
And we had a really, really productive like Q&A session. They really loved the story. They loved everything it was
Mm-hmm.
about. And we didn't hear from them for a little bit after that. So I got really anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a couple other wins at the time. We got picked up by Mother's Market and
Mm-hmm.
started like selling into SoCal. But I didn't hear from her because like there was some kind of personnel change there
Mm-hmm.
at Sprouts. And,
Yeah.
that happens all the time.
Right.
So I kind of just put it on the back shelf. And then I heard that what they ended up doing was for their reset, they had a scorecard
Okay.
that they scored all of their beverages on.
Yep.
And apparently we did well on the scorecard.
Yeah.
And I just got a random call the first week of September, and they're like, your go live date is November 11th.
Wow.
So then it was just crazy because
Yeah.
then we had to actually figure out what our capacity was. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sprouts is 450 doors, and we were operating probably on half capacity maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That's without any equipment upgrades. But since then, we've actually installed a 45 barrel tank, which we had bought at an auction. Like everything that we own is bought by an auction.
Yeah.
So like our canning system, it's probably like $70,000 machine, and we got it at an auction for 11.
Nice win there. That's a
Yeah,
win.
yeah, this 45 barrel tank, we got for like, I want to say $7,000. So
Wow.
that just got installed last week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my dream would be to be able to to be able to service like the natural food channel, food retailers in-house,
Yeah.
and then go to a co-man, when we expand beyond that. So
Yeah.
I'm giving you my playbook now.
Yeah. But it's amazing though to hear the story, and it's just so real. And I think, one of the things that you said, which I think will resonate a lot with everyone, is in that entrepreneurial journey, having those moments when you're asking yourself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Should I continue doing it? Is probably something a lot of people ask themselves. This is such a competitive industry,
Yeah,
and
it really
uh,
is.
the odds of success are fairly small, but you do have to kind of hold out for those wins and keep forging forward.
Yeah.
So, in that, so you've had a couple of these really big wins now. So you're increasing your capacity. So you're going to be able to meet their 450 store capacity now with all your new equipment that you've gotten in, or are you still ramping things
Oh
up in
yeah,
house?
no, actually we can handle, I don't know if the team is going to like me saying this, but I think we can
Yeah.
handle probably 2,000 doors.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great.
So I think we have quite a bit of room to expand, but we're definitely
Yeah.
going to make it a priority in 2026, probably Q2, to identify a co-manufacturer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. How did you decide, or what point was it when you brought on your broker that was a good partner for you?
Well, so our tap room had been open for about a year, and I was like, well, look, we're not going to get to our dream if we're just in the tap room. So we need to
Mm-hmm.
expand beyond that. And retail it's what everyone thinks of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was natural for us to go into retail. And we are a really premium, like, health food. Like we
Mm-hmm.
are like the definition of a health food.
Yeah.
So you just don't, like there's a lot of opinions out there, especially if you're on LinkedIn. You can get 400,000 opinions on how to do it. But in my
Yeah.
opinion, I was not able to make any headway
Mm-hmm.
without someone that had some contacts. So, and I did not know, I'm new to CPG. This is my first business in CPG, so I don't
Yeah.
know how it works. Like a year ago, I had not heard of Kehi or Unify.
Mm-hmm.
So, I felt like it was really necessary to bring on somebody who not
Yeah.
only had the contacts, but knew how it worked.
Yeah.
And I thankfully found what I believe are the right people, because I can very easily see how you can get kind of run with the wrong people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's very risky, especially when you're self-funding this venture up to this
Yeah.
point. So what were some things you looked for that you thought that person was a good fit for you to collaborate besides just contacts?
Um, well, so there I'm still kind of a baby in this. So,
Mm-hmm.
there's probably a lot of things to look for, but
Yeah.
and the two brokers that I have are like very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to like kind of understand like the pros and cons of like,
Yeah.
different styles. But I would definitely say that like if you are just one of like 200 brands that they support, they're probably playing a numbers game of some kind, and
Mm-hmm.
signing a lot of people on and just kind of seeing who hits, and then hoping, they probably hope that 5 of their 200 hit.
Yeah.
Which is not to say it's awful. I'm just, it's just something to consider. Most have, only take on one company in a certain category or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Um, but being hands-on and really communicative is really important to me. I'm like a big communication person.
Mhm.
And so, like we've sat on calls with, Whole Foods, but I'm always in that call. It's not
Mhm.
just her and talking directly to them. She
Yeah.
copies me on everything.
Mhm.
And so I'm really aware of what's going on, and that's really important to me. And like their level of, you can tell when they are talking to the retailer, how much the retailer trusts them,
Mhm.
or whether they're just yet another broker that comes through the door.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's all good advice of what to look for. No, yeah, the point about kind of being copied on emails and kind of staying in the know is so important too, especially at your stage of where you're at, and as you plan for growth, because one decision can totally change the trajectory of where you're headed. So very critical not to just let it, even though they're an expert, to kind of leave it in their hands, so to speak.
Yeah, and I want to manage that relationship,
Yeah.
It's between, I mean, I feel like the broker should be a broker, the broker of the relationship,
Yeah.
but I want to like own that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I want the buyer to meet me and see me,
Yeah.
and ask me the questions. And especially for people like the foragers at Whole Foods, or like
Mm-hmm.
the story is really important part of
Yeah.
it. So they need to meet, the founders and understand the funding behind it and the plans. So having a broker that can like let you tell your story and that believes
Mm-hmm.
in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Being that you've self-funded up to this point to where you want to bring the company, are you thinking about just continuing self-funding, or at some point bringing on an investor in the business?
But we'll see. I'm kind of I wish I could say that I wasn't playing it by ear, but I'm s- yeah, I'm still hoping to keep it like pretty close to the chest for as
Yeah.
long as I can. Um I'm in the very beginning of trying to understand the marketing
Yeah.
behind it. We also have a pretty big e-commerce push coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So we're diving into that channel, and that's a whole different set of like, it's a whole different business strategy.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I really hope to keep it just to ourselves.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can
I
do that,
mean,
then
I
less
hope that
people
one
in the
day it's
mix.
profitable. It
Yeah.
is a long road to profitability that
Yeah.
I can see,
Yeah.
that I'm very aware of.
Yeah. So you have a lot of things in the plans and in the works already. An e-commerce push. You have some new product coming out, new flavors. What is the big vision for your company and your brand?
Well, we just want to be all things water kefir. We love water kefir, and we think it's like a magic potion. Um, and you can really do a lot of things with water kefir, as we are finding out. So we do have the beverage, which is kind of like a soda, and
Mm-hmm.
then we have the alcohol. And right before in Utopia, I was on a run, and I was talking to the team, and she's like, "Oh, we're having to like discard the culture. It's kind of such a waste, because it's like so good. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's what the brew make is made from, right?
Yeah.
But we're gonna like just it's like we're gonna like set it aside and just like treat it as like, we're done with it.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, well, how does it taste? And I was like, what's the probiotic profile of it?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like tasting it, and then I'm like, well, I mean, I don't think I want to drink 12 ounces of it, but as a shot, it's not bad.
Yeah.
So we were just kind of playing around with it. And I was like, look, you guys, we have Newtopia next week. Just bottle some of it up, and then we'll just bring it. So we labeled and bottled these like 2-ounce aluminum cans, but
Mm-hmm.
bottles that we got from the restaurant store online.
Yeah.
And we flavored them with kind of like fun flavors. We have
Mm-hmm.
a peach Bellini and a Paloma. Get it?
Yeah.
Shot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And we brought like several hundred of them to Newtopia, and they were gone within
Oh, wow.
2 days, So, we did get the eye of a retailer or two there.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we'll have some
Exciting.
fun, exciting news in Q1 of 2026.
Yeah.
Um,
Would those
and,
need to be refrigerated also?
yeah, I mean, so our water kefir is interesting in that it's not like any other kombucha that you find on the shelf in that it won't continue to ferment because there's no
Mm-hmm.
sugar in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's if it sits on the shelf, nothing will happen. It won't explode
Mm-hmm.
on you or anything like that.
Yeah.
But we tell people like for the health of the probiotics, you should just keep it chilled. But it's not like a cold chain product where
Yeah.
like it has to be like
Yeah.
guaranteed,
Mm-hmm.
like it can sit out for a while and the health and the probiotics will actually just be fine. You might lose like a couple strains of yeast or something at
Mm-hmm.
some point, but it's
Yeah.
not like critical,
Yeah.
not like super critical. Yeah. And yeah, the shot is the same, but no one, I mean, when we were at Newtopia, because it wasn't cold,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, we were like, wait, like chill it first. And people are like, oh, we don't care. And they would like try it. So I would not drink it, not chilled, but
Mm-hmm.
technically you could.
Yeah.
And as a supplement shot, it is the only probiotic shot with zero sugar, zero sweeteners that's even close to being palatable. You can
Mm-hmm.
find like an I'm not going to name them dairy kind of probiotic,
Uh-huh.
wellness shot that's has no sugar sweeteners, but it's their original like unflavored version, and
Okay.
it's not palatable.
Not,
I
yeah,
don't think
not too
so.
tasty. Peach Bellini sounds much better.
Yeah.
So I just have to say, I love how fast you can iterate. And I know that's
Yes.
definitely
So
part of your
fast.
secret sauce of the business,
Yes.
and why the self-manufacturing has been such a win for your business as well. But
Yeah.
the fact that you can have the idea and you saw the opportunity and say, let's just can this and bring it with us, and off the shelves it goes.
Yeah.
I love that. So with, not a whole lot of people out there knowing what water kefir is, how much do you feel that you need to educate on what that is, all in addition to who you are?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, we spend well in the natural channels, I think more people are aware of it
Aware.
than
Yeah.
I, expected. But I always approach people assuming that they don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There actually has been water kefir on the shelf of these natural food retailers for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
So GT's, the original kombucha maker,
Mm-hmm.
they have one on the shelf called Agua de Kefir. We're actually next to them in
Okay.
Sprouts.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the original one that I drank, and
Mm-hmm.
my daughter loved. So people, but it's kind of like there's two sides to it. A lot of people haven't heard of water kefir, but a lot of people, everyone's heard of kefir,
Yeah.
right? So when we first came on the market and we were only selling the alcohol, people were like, well, is it like an alcoholic milk?
Yeah.
And so we had a bit of, kind of education to do there.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I think that in this next year, we're going to have enough education out there
Mm-hmm.
that, the people who are paying attention are going to like see
Yeah.
it. I think that there's been a lot of hesitancy to actually use the words water kefir.
Okay.
Because as you see, GT's calls it agua de kefir.
Yeah.
And then Kavita's probiotic refresher is actually a water kefir, but they just called it a probiotic refresher. You can't tell it's a water kefir unless you looked at the ingredients. And they brew with the water kefir culture.
Yeah.
So I think that, but both of those are kombucha companies and probably didn't want to put in the marketing effort into educating people on what water kefir was.
Right.
But I'm really passionate about calling it water kefir. And so on our label, on our can, which is super fun, you'll
Mm-hmm.
see like water kefir is just really bold
Yeah.
up top because I just want to call it what it is. And it's like, it's awesome. It is a kefir. So people kind of already feel like it's fermented plus our name.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully that'll give people like a healthy sense.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
think that's a
there's a
wise
lot of
idea. Yeah.
education.
Yeah. It gives you the opportunity to own that, that portion of the market, even though there's a couple of players out there doing it. But if they're not using that phrase, and your cans are super fun, and we'll definitely be sharing some pictures of them when we share this episode. So, and your website is also super fun too.
Oh, thank
I
you.
love
Thank
how
you.
the cans almost are like animated and or
Yeah.
dancing, and the logos kind of dancing on the cans. Are very cool. So it's a lot of life to it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up our chat today, there's one question I always ask our guests, and it is, what has been your recipe to revenue?
Oh, it's a tough one. Like my instinct is to say, like, if you have a dream, to not give up on it and to find a way to get through those dark times. But as someone who's done that and failed in the past, I would just couch that with like, okay, you do need some like validation. You
Yeah.
need market validation, expert validation of some kind, trial and error, to know that you're on the right path.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and and if you really, really believe that you have something that can turn into like your dream come true, then you just have to go and celebrate the little wins, and you have to plot your action. To
Yeah.
me, like action is what gets me out of the funks of like the dark times when I'm like, oh my God, is this ever going to be a thing? And then I literally just sit down and I think to myself, okay, what's the one thing I can do today to move me closer to my goal? I just need to do one thing. If I can do one thing in 1 month, you've done 30 things.
Yeah.
They
It's a
say
great way to
you
look at it.
always overestimate what you can do in a short time, but you underestimate what you can do in 6 months.
Yeah.
And I told my team this every single week for Q1 2025. I said, guys, think about how far we've come in 1 year. Like, where were we a year ago? We didn't even
Yeah.
have our equipment in the brewery, much less have something to take out to the market.
Yeah.
We thought we just had our tap room open. So,
Mm.
so yeah, that's I guess a couple
I
different
love it.
things, but to like
Yeah.
believe and then take action,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Have a dream, validate it with, with some real world data, and just keep moving forward. Just
Yeah.
every day achieve something so you can create the momentum for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, Jade, thank you so much for joining me today. Where should everybody find you, connect with you, look for your product?
Awesome. Well, in retail, so we're in Sprouts, and you can find that at the retail locations or on Instacart. And then if you don't have a Sprouts near you, we will ship it to you. And you can also buy the probiotic shots online as well.
Fantastic.
And we are coming out with some really fun flavors on e-commerce that you won't find in the
In
retail,
store. Okay.
like a electrolyte pickle juice
Oh,
probiotic shot.
wow. Well, that's going to get people talking. Very exciting. Well, thanks again for joining us on Recipe to Revenue. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah. Bye.
Bye.